So, welcome everybody to another interview with wonderful leaders within our community. My guest today is a lady that I've only recently come across via Facebook and through friends. And I was and still am fascinated and intrigued by what she's doing, and I wanted to find out a bit more. She has studied and worked internationally and locally. She's an educator, and she's brought all her beautiful experience and wonderful ideas to our local communities. So I'd like to welcome Jessica Wallace to our chat this morning. Thank you, Jessica, for taking the time to be here.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, Jessica, I'm going to let you tell us a little bit more about about all the wonderful things you're creating. But before we get started with that, I'd like to ask you what inspires you and what gets you going in the morning. You know, waking up every morning and doing what you do.
Question. What inspires me? It is a feeling that I get when I'm flowing with my true essence, I guess, is what inspires me. I can see it when it's happening in others, and that inspires me as well. But for me personally, it's when I am, when you lose track of time and you are just so invested with your whole mind, body, soul, and whatever it is that you're creating. That is what inspires me, those moments of pure flow. And I try to provide opportunities for others to engage in those moments of flow as much as possible. The tricky part is it's different for every single person.
Yes.
So sometimes for me, sometimes it's reading, sometimes it's creating. And as far as what I create, the sky is the limit. And really.
Yes, that's beautiful. And I can resonate with that flow that you talk about, because it's not necessarily happening all the time, but when it does, you kind of step back and you go, oh gosh, that worked out really well, and that was just beautiful. And it always amazes you, we're always amazed by it, yet we shouldn't really be, because that's the natural state of being, isn't it? Beautiful.
Ourselves to be present with what we're actually doing in the moment. It does happen very rarely in today's society, where we're so fixated on rushing around and our to-do lists and accomplishing so much and striving forward faster and we need to take some deep breaths and just be a little bit more, because that's when the magic happens. That's when what you're creating actually means something, when you aren't in a rush, when you allow time to be present.
Yes, absolutely. So so tell us a little bit about what you've created. It's an education program system that you run on site at your place of residence. So I'll let you give us a little bit of insight as to what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, so I have recently, with my family, we've moved to 100 acres in Lower Chittering, and we bought the property because we wanted our dream was to have a space where people could come to, number one, engage with nature and be submersed in nature. I think there's a lot of connection nowadays with nature, and it's often even hard for people to realize that we are nature. And so the more advanced we get in society, it's almost like the bigger the disconnect becomes. And it is almost a disconnection from that ability to be as well. It's very hard to be when there's a lot of chaos and distraction.
Yeah.
And that's not saying that here is quiet. Here is extraordinarily noisy, but it's noisy with birds and water and bees and all sorts of creatures you're making. But it's almost like the noises are in harmony with the soul and the flow of the earth, and it allows you to tap into, I think, that sense of flow more quickly, more readily when you're immersed in nature. So we bought this property wanting to share this beautiful with others. We want to care for just a tiny slice of this gorgeous planet that we're lucky enough to call home, and extraordinarily lucky enough right now, because I'm from Canada and my family's been in lockdown for over a year now. I just think we have such an opportunity here in Perth and surrounds to really grow as humans, and we aren't being locked inside and being forbidden from interacting with each other. So it's an opportunity to connect with each other and with nature when the rest of the world doesn't have that luxury. So essentially our goal was to make this land accessible to others so that people can come and learn what they need to learn. And again, that looks so different for people. And I've been teaching for so long, but to all ages. So really that's what we're offering here at the Conscious Education Eco Center, is we want people to have an opportunity to come into nature and to learn what they need to learn. This term, we're focusing on offering workshops for all ages. And that really depends on what people who have been coming tell me that they're interested in learning. People tell me they're interested in learning something, then I try and either provide a workshop on it myself or hire an expert to provide those workshops to come in and help us learn, so that I'm learning as well as we go. And I've got some amazing teachers that are doing some incredible teachings. We've got Steve Aldridge from Wild Movement Perth. He's doing lots of learning from nature itself. And again, because I'm from Canada, I did grow up in the bush in Canada, but the plants and the animals are so different here. I needed an expert.
That's right.
From Wise Learning, she's an amazing educator for young children as well, teaching children how to connect with their inner selves, their inner truths, to sort of ground themselves in what they are before they go out and decide what it is they want to learn. Have to go in. And so she's fantastic at getting children to really develop the ability to tune into themselves, and then presenting them with stories. This term we have earthing moccasin workshops, we have painting workshops, we have waterfall wisdom for women, which I'm really excited about. We have a gorgeous cascading waterfall that cascades for about 1 kilometer, and there's different plunge pools and water pools. In ancient times, women were often the keepers of the water, and this is sort of an attempt to reconnect women with that ancient past, those ancient roots, and to reclaim our inner wisdom that perhaps some of us don't even realize we have within us.
That's right. And forgotten in the way we live our lives. So so Jessica, let's take a step back. So in terms of, because you're offering so much for such all kinds of, all various ages, I guess. And I didn't realize that you were, doing workshops and running workshops for adults as well, which is fabulous. So in terms of the children's education, are you running, is it sort of run like a school within school terms, school hours, or is it a little bit more customized and different in terms of how you run the school for kids, for the children?
So we've been playing a bit with how we run the workshops, because this is a new form of education. Essentially, I wouldn't say it's anything like school, because it is purely self-directed. So the students come, under no circumstances has anyone sat down and said, you have to sit here and finish this task, and here's the task I'm giving you, and whether you want to do it or not, this is what you have to do. I have taught in mainstream schools. I've taught in Montessori and Steiner and Waldorf. I've even taught at university. I've taught throughout all these systems. And what I keep seeing is that the learning isn't always necessarily meaningful. Even myself, I've got several degrees. I got very good at memorizing information and regurgitating the information that I knew was required, acing exams. But then afterwards, when I was actually doing my own reflection, taking a moment to really think, wow, I've gained this degree. What did I actually learn? And little of what I memorized was actually transferred to long-term memory. So it was really just a feeling of something learned. It wasn't necessarily all that content I could regurgitate for the exam wasn't necessarily within me. So I questioned myself and really ask, what should education actually be? What did I actually get out of school when I was in school? What are these children nowadays getting out of school? And I just when I was teaching in the mainstream system and in private schools and different systems, I just continuously saw that the minute you make education a system, you're pleasing the system. You're working for the system. You're not trying to educate an individual human who has individual needs. So what I realized is that the learning has to come from the children or the adults themselves. It can't come from a teacher. A teacher is more of a facilitator, someone who can guide someone or provide materials or, provide them with their expertise or their wisdom, but it's not someone who can say, now it's time to learn this and you need to learn this because it's what I think is most important. The only information that anyone is going to actually internalize and really truly learn is information that they've thought themselves and learning that they've set out to accomplish themselves, because that's the only thing they're going to find meaningful. So it's the
So do you think that, so in terms of along those lines then, when we are learning about maths and the sciences and everything else, where, a younger child isn't even necessarily aware about all those things. They are, but in a very different format, I guess, to what's taught in school, right? Because the application in reality is not always in the same structured format that it takes place in the classroom. So I guess, do you sort of present those? Do you follow the curriculum to a point so that these kids are exposed, or the children are exposed to that kind of thing, and then taking it at their own pace and in a playful manner, or in a manner that they can resonate with?
So it's always hands-on. That has become very clear to me that some children love doing worksheets. My own daughter is one of those people. But as far as how much internalized information she's actually getting from them, it's very limited. So we try and make things as hands-on as possible. The children have access to hands-on materials covering the entire curriculum from kindergarten through high school. So it's all available to them. We have a very large learning center here with heaps of shelves that are just filled with different learning opportunities. We have an arts center, a science center. We have an invention center. We have all these different learning areas where the kids can go, see what materials are there, and then engage with the materials in their own way, in their own time. What I often see too is that when you give children an opportunity to do open-ended learning, as opposed to telling them a specific outcome that you're looking for, they will take the concept and take it so much than you anticipate, and come to conclusions that perhaps are from the year 10 curriculum, whereas they might be 7 years old or 6 years old, and they might focus on one area or topic for an entire year because they're so focused or interested on, say, I had one student this past term who was super into electronics. And so we have lots of wires and batteries and motors and ingredients for the children to explore. And so this one child who was 6 years old, and electronics doesn't come into the system curriculum until much later. But this child it up, and it was what his soul found intriguing. So he would, every time he came, he would just dive straight into that. And so as the teacher, I was essentially stepping in only when he asked for help, only when he asked for clarification, or only when he asked for more information. Most of the time he was spending playing with these materials, making a lot of mistakes, not getting the motor working, trying again and again and again to get these black and red wires to make this motor turn on, and not succeeding. So a lot of the time is actually spent failing, which again is not really something you see a lot of in the normal school systems. Aren't really given the opportunity to trial and error to make
That's
their own
right.
path. But
Yes,
then
yes.
once he did discover that obviously there needed to be a positive and negative, we needed a circuit, he was actually able to voice his discovery without using those scientific terms necessarily, but he was able to say, well, it needs to be a loop. You need to
Yes.
have it, which for him, again, this is in a much higher curriculum level than he would have been allowed to
Yes, yes, in the
uh,
school system.
engage with if he was in a normal school system.
Yes.
But because he had engaged with the materials in his own way, that he ended up inventing this incredible machine that had a motor, it had pulleys, it had all of these intricate design
Yeah.
pieces that were so much. So he was covering, and again, because I'm a normal teacher as well, a qualified teacher in the mainstream
The
system,
system.
well,
Yes.
other qualifications, I know what curriculum he's hitting. He's
Yes.
actually exceeding any sort of grade expectations for his age group. And
Yes.
it doesn't even mean he's like a genius or anything. It just means when you're passionate,
Inspired, like, yeah, that's right. Inspired and passionate. Yes.
interested in what you're learning just skyrocket. And
Yes.
so through this, I encourage the children to then teach the other children what they've learned. And then they often, they're always constantly doing that naturally. But what they also then begin to develop are their skills of oral communication. And again, it's about inspiring them. So not forcing the rules of the written language or even the reading the information.
Yes.
We have different techniques for reading the information. We use technology so that they access high level information at a very young age. So we have something called a C pen. We have something called the green pen. So ways that they can actually have these books read to them with really high level content, but they
Mm.
don't even have to be able to read it
Yes.
because we want to get the inspiration there. We want to get them wanting to learn how to read before we actually take them down that path. So when
Yes.
children act, they see a lot, often they'll see older kids reading. We have mixed age groups always, so that the older kids can be learning from the younger kids can be learning from the adults can be learning from the children, and vice versa.
Yes.
Um, because the adults aren't meant to be experts. We are not experts, despite what the children may think of us. We're
Or
still
what we
learning
think,
too.
no,
So
despite what we think of ourselves, Jessica.
uh,
It's just what we think of. We think we're the experts. Yeah. That's right. And so, can I ask you? So, when you say the adults being around, so do you encourage? So, do parents stay in throughout the day, or do you encourage that participation?
yeah, we encourage adults to participate completely. We encourage adults to engage in their own learning as well. We encourage adults to be either bring something they're interested in working on, or find something that interests them and then work on it there. If a child approaches them, we ask them to model what they're working on so that the children have the opportunity to learn from what the adults are doing, but it's not a requirement.
Yes.
So you're encouraged to bring something to model. Um, and even one of the things I have to often explain to the adults is that you're actually asked to model failure well. So when you make mistakes, I ask the adults to share that, to say, whoops, I didn't do this correctly. It's not working. I guess I'll have to adjust it and try again. A
Mm.
lot of a lot of the issues I've discovered in education, a lot of them revolve around children's fear of failure.
Yes.
There's not a lot of adults out there who successful adults who are willing to admit their mistakes. And this process of growing our minds and growth mindset is definitely at the core of what we do. One of the things I do present very early on is that our brain physiology is actually designed. Our brains humans used to think that, and scientists used to think that our brains stopped developing around the age of 20, 21 when we finished education. But what we now know is that our brains can continue growing inevitably. They just keep growing if you continue learning.
Yes.
And what science is now with the neurology of the brain is the neurons in our brain and pathways in our brain only grow. So our brain will only grow if we are making mistakes. If we're traveling along the same neural pathways that we've always traveled along and we're getting the correct answers every time, the pathways stay the same and we just keep traveling along them back and forth. We're not learning anything new. But by failing, what we're actually doing is the neurons go, oh, that didn't work. I've got to try a new pathway. I've got to try coming up here. I've got to try something different. I've got to go a different angle. I've got to look at this from a different perspective. And suddenly, boom, all these new neural pathways growing. Our brain grows. We actually grow our brains. We become more intelligent, more capable of dealing with change and challenge, which
That's
kind
right.
of nowadays.
Yes.
So the process of failing and learning from our mistakes is a huge part of the learning process.
Learning and growing, that's right.
Needs to be celebrated, I think. So we're actually at the point now where when students make mistakes, they like to cheer, like, yeah, I failed. And it's wonderful to there's laughter, joy, there's acceptance around mistakes. It means your brain is growing. This is exciting. What am I going to discover next? Opposed to, I'm no good at this. I can't do this. I can't do math. I can't do English. I'm not good. Art, whatever it is that people have been told in the past, they're now sort of being freed from those thoughts and are being allowed again to explore the world around them and really immerse yourself in the joy that you can discover when those mistakes are.
And when you allow yourself to make those mistakes, as you say, and explore other avenues. So what are the age groups of the children that are attending or young adults that are attending the
youngest student? Well, there is actually some of the parents bring their baby, or bring one of our families was bringing our 4-year-old student, but also bringing their 2-year-old daughter as well, just to kind of observe and see what was going on. And she actually got incredibly involved and she used to, the 2-year-old would say, I've got to go do my storytelling, Mom. You can't come over. I've got to practice. So she would go over to the storytelling area and work. Like for her, it's work. She's working hard on telling stories and working with just little bits of seeds and leaves, but to her they were creatures, and they represented characters and symbols, and she was working on plot development, all this stuff that is so far beyond what a 2-year-old is normally exposed to, but was an amazing storyteller. So that's what her soul was telling her to do. And listened, because when she was ready to share her story, they were delightful and very full of wisdom and challenge, and without her even realizing, without being explicitly taught about, the plot structure and conflict resolution and rising and she had all of that in her without ever needing to. So and I think what I'm learning through all of this is that teachers, I could see becoming redundant, that adults, if they're taught how to provide this type of education, we really need to be just present as guides for our children. We don't necessarily have to have memorized 4 different ways to do long division in order for our children to be presented with, say, 20 lily pillies and 5 children, and we have to figure out how can we share these evenly. And the student that who collected those lily pillies is going to want to make sure they're fairly distributed, so they're going to learn division. And so so little to do with the teacher, is what I'm learning, and so much more to do with the individual and what makes their soul sing.
Yes,
And
but I guess there is the aspect of adults getting back in touch with their own creativity and their own
mm,
nature, natural sort of state of being, so that you
yeah,
can pass that on to your children. Because I guess that's the thing, parents, adults feel disempowered because they're not educators and they're not teachers. They don't think, they know, we teach our children a certain amount of society, rules and regulations, but in terms of the actual education, I guess we hand it over to educators, isn't it? Because we're not
that-
in touch with it ourselves.
that's exactly correct, because we weren't brought up that way.
No, no.
We were brought up with quiet and don't ask questions, and definitely don't admit when you make a mistake, like hide it at all costs. So
Yes,
I think a lot of parents are, especially with COVID, a lot of parents are really struggling with this aspect of having to educate their own children, because they're trying to uphold a system that isn't serving the individual anymore. So what we're trying to do, Jill and I, Jillian Howarth, who runs Upborn YC, is also an amazing educator, qualified, who has also left the system with a realization that we can be offering something more meaningful to our children. We've been, and because her and I've been offering these workshops for a few years now, and we're reaching lots of children, but really we need to reach the adults more, because anyone can be doing this. It's not, you don't have to have 40 years of teaching experience in order to become an incredible guide for children. So what we're actually trying to focus on now, as well as running workshops for the children still, but we're
mm,
trying to really help adults transform education. So Jill and I are actually running a series of workshops right now that are available to attend in person or online. Uh,
okay.
Exactly, it's trying to help adults understand the education they themselves, and then trying to future we actually want for the world. How
Yes,
to, what steps, what skills will our children need to create this future that we're trying to dream into to being right now?
yes,
And the same skills that were required during the Industrial Revolution, when we needed skills to follow instructions, when we needed skills to um, you know get the right answer. We've moved beyond that as
yes,
a society in the world. So as much as traditional knowledge is still, I think, valuable, but perhaps not all children need to learn calculus. Perhaps not all individuals need to become proficient experts in the English language. Perhaps instead we need to let people figure out what their own gifts are, and
mm,
then let them discover how they can bring those out into the world with possibilities that we haven't been able to envision because we weren't freedom
yes,
when we
yes,
had
that's
ourselves.
right. So
So it's
so Jessica, where can they find, where can adults find information about the workshops and the courses and everything else that you do currently run and will be running in future?
currently the best way, and because my own expertise does not lie in technology, I am still learning that myself. So we don't have a website yet, but we do have an email address that is probably the easiest way to contact us. So consciouseducationperth@gmail.com. And
Right.
that's probably the quickest way to let us know what you're interested in, whether it's um, seeing this process, getting involved with it with your family or with children. Often even have mainstream families coming out, taking a well-being day from school, taking a break from mainstream schools, so that you can get a chance to delve into what you're.
Yes. Just to see what else is available out there. Oh, Jessica, we kind of lost you a little bit. Okay, so Jessica, yes, sorry, we had a little bit of a glitch there with the reception. That's all good.
Me and technology.
Yeah, beautiful technology.
The best way to contact us is consciouseducationperth@gmail.com. And let me know what you're interested in. Again, it's very much self-directed and we are guides, but because I do have the benefit of having years and years of experience behind me, I can help people understand this beautiful new way to learn. And that's our goal now, is to transform education, to make it a more meaningful, engaging process that will actually allow us to create the world we wish to see.
That sounds beautiful. I love that. And I will post, so, you know, with the interview link, I will post the email address and a link to your Facebook page as well, so that people can just click on it and go and have a look at that. And so, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us. And before we close off, are there any last parting words that you'd like to leave with us? Any words of wisdom?
I would say, yes, try learning, especially the adults listening to this. Try learning again, try learning a new skill, allow yourself to fail, see it as a beautiful process. If you could learn anything you wanted, what would it be? And then go out and do it. There's so many ways nowadays to gain new skills without even having to pay for them. It's just everything is at our fingertips these days. Give yourself the opportunity to grow yourself again, and really keep space for the failure, and have a good laugh when it happens, because it will. But know that that's a sign that you are growing yourself, which is an amazing thing to do at every age.
Oh, that's beautiful and so very true. Very wise words there. Thank you so much, Jessica, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
You're welcome.